In the stillness of the Nile, a forgotten temple whispers. Neferu walks toward it, a scribe chasing silence and secrets. Among cracked stones and fading gods, he finds it, a scroll glowing with echoes older than Pharaohs. The temple breathes. Life unfolds on the walls, birth, death, betrayal. The gods are not stone. They remember Dot in the dream beyond death. He drifts. And she appears? Maya, winged balance. Ancient law. Her voice is wind and judgment. He awakens, but not unchanged. The scroll is gone. Only the feather remains. A gift, or a warning. Time buries all. Yet what is buried still breathes. 1,000 years later, the feather waits to be found. Again. Have you ever considered how some conversations, perhaps even whispered across millennia, manage to reach us, albeit faintly, through the sands of time? It's a strange fact, isn't it, that we can feel a connection to people who lived thousands of years ago simply by looking at their enduring creations or piecing together the fragmented stories they left behind. It's almost as if the very air of Egypt holds residual whispers from its earliest inhabitants, telling us tales of a struggle for survival and the first stirrings of a truly remarkable civilization. So before we get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. The cradle of civilization, the desert, a vast, indifferent expanse, wasn't always just a silent backdrop. It was in fact the very cradle where scattered nomadic tribes first heard the persistent, life-giving whisper of the Nile, drawing them irresistibly to its fertile banks. Imagine, if you will, the sheer pull of that ribbon of green against the chi. Endless ochre, promising not just survival, but the very possibility of a settled existence, a future beyond the daily hunt and gather. These weren't grand kingdoms yet, nor were there pharaohs with golden masks. These were small, disparate groups of people, much like us, seeking sustenance and security in a world that was both beautiful and relentlessly harsh. They were learning slowly, intuitively, how to work with the land, how to anticipate the annual inundation of the river, that miraculous flood which brought both devastation and rejuvenation in equal measure. Historians still argue whether the earliest settlements were truly permanent, or if people still maintained a semi-nomadic lifestyle, returning to the river only for certain seasons. But what is clear is that the river was their lifeblood, shaping their understanding of the world, fostering a collective memory of plenty and scarcity. As these communities grew, expanding along the Nile, they began to develop distinct cultural identities, much like different dialects emerging from a common language. You had the people of the Naqada culture in Upper Egypt, creating exquisite pottery with distinctive red-on-buff designs, a testament to their budding artistic sensibilities. Up north in Lower Egypt, other groups were forming, perhaps a little more pragmatic, a little less ornate in their early expressions. It's fascinating, really, to think that these early stylistic choices, these subtle differences in how they decorated a pot or fashioned a tool, were the very first inklings of regional identity that would later play such a significant role in this story of Egypt. A MINSTREAM historical fact from this period is the development of early agricultural techniques, particularly the domestication of cereals like barley and emmer wheat, which provided a stable food source and allowed for the growth of larger, more permanent settlements. This shift from pure foraging to farming, a truly revolutionary concept for its time, meant they no longer had to constantly chase their next meal, freeing up time for other pursuits like, well, making really nice pots and eventually building even nicer pyramids. But life wasn't just about farming and pottery. It was about understanding their world. And for these early Egyptians, that meant looking to the natural forces around them. The sun, the river, the animals, they all became imbued with a kind of spirit, a divine presence that needed to be understood, appeased, and eventually worshipped. You can almost picture them gathered around a flickering fire at dusk, sharing stories of a great crocodile god or a powerful falcon spirit, trying to make sense of the inexplicable. It's this deep connection to nature, this nascent spiritual understanding, that would form the very bedrock of their complex religious beliefs. This intimate relationship with their environment, particularly the Nile's predictable yet awe-inspiring cycles, fundamentally shaped their worldview, fostering a sense of order and cosmic balance that would permeate every aspect of their civilization, from their art to their politics. This period, often called the Predynastic period, wasn't just a prelude. It was the essential formative stage, where the foundational elements of Egyptian society, religion, and culture were painstakingly laid down, brick by metaphorical brick, on the fertile mud of the Nile Valley. The unification and rise of the Old Kingdom, that gentle, almost imperceptible drawing together of disparate communities, began to accelerate, leading inevitably toward a more cohesive whole, culminating in what historians generally agree was the unification of the two lands. This monumental achievement is often attributed to a figure named Narmer, who perhaps more than anyone else forged the very first truly Egyptian state. Now, perhaps is a key word here, because the exact sequence of events, and even the precise identity of the unifier, is one of those delightful mysteries that keeps Egyptologists up at night. Historians still argue whether Narmer was the very first king of a united Egypt, or if his reign merely solidified a process that had been underway for generations. But one mainstream historical fact we can point to is the Narmer palette, a truly remarkable piece of carved siltstone, which depicts a king undeniably in armor, wearing both the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt, triumphing over his enemies. This palette isn't just pretty. It's a visual manifesto telling a story of conquest and consolidation, showing Narmer smiting his foes and sending a clear message. Order has been established, and the king is its divine guarantor. The establishment of a unified state wasn't just a political reshuffle. It had profound implications for every aspect of life along the Nile. With a single authority, resources could be managed more efficiently, particularly the precious waters of the annual inundation. Irrigation systems could be developed on a larger scale, ensuring more consistent agricultural yields, which in turn supported a growing population and, crucially, freed up labor for large-scale projects that would soon become iconic. This shift toward a more organized society also led to the development of early administrative systems, including a rudimentary form of writing. The very first hieroglyphs began as simple pictograms and slowly evolved into a more complex system for recording everything from royal decrees to grain harvests. The pharaoh, now the supreme ruler, was not merely a king, but a divine being, a living god, the embodiment of Horus, the falcon god. This concept of divine kingship was deeply ingrained in their worldview, providing a spiritual justification for the king's absolute authority and the stability of the entire cosmos. The unification, therefore, wasn't just a political event. It was the birth of a civilization, complete with its unique blend of divine authority, administrative ingenuity, and a deep reverence for order. The mysterious whisper of the Nile, the desert, a vast, indifferent expanse, but it wasn't always a silent backdrop. In fact, it was the very cradle where scattered nomadic tribes first heard the persistent, life-giving whisper of the Nile, a siren call, drawing them irresistibly to its fertile banks. Imagine, if you will, the sheer pull of that ribbon of green against the endless ochre, promising not just survival, but the very possibility of a settled existence, a future beyond the daily hunt and gather. These were not grand kingdoms yet, nor were there pharaohs with golden masks. These were small, disparate groups of people much like us, seeking sustenance and security in a world that was both beautiful and relentlessly harsh. Our story begins with one such person, a young woman named Nefer, a potter whose hands smelled of earth and whose soul yearned for permanence. Her tribe, much like many in Upper Egypt, was semi-nomadic, retreating to the desert when the Nile's annual floods came, only to return when the waters receded. But unlike her ancestors, Nefer's spirit longed for a life rooted in the land, a life secured by the rhythm of the river. Nefer's gift was in understanding the earth, while other potters made simple, unadorned vessels, the pieces that emerged from her hands were breathtaking. They were adorned with the distinctive red-on-buff designs of the Naqada culture, each pattern telling a story of the sun, the sky, or the river's gentle waves. Yet Nefer's heart was not only dedicated to her craft, but also to a secret. Lost secret of Naqada. It was an old legend, whispered around crackling fires. It was said that the first potters of Naqada possessed a special technique, a way to converse with the spirits of the earth and the river, giving life to a simple lump of clay. This technique didn't just produce beauty, it endowed the vessels with a mysterious durability, a resilience that defied the ravages of time and the brutal force of the Nile's floods. Nefer was determined to find this secret. Her goal was not just to honor her tribe's name, but to create pottery that would withstand even the fiercest floods, paving the way for a permanent settlement for her people. 1 year, as the annual inundation began, the tribes retreated into the desert. But Nefer chose a different path. Without telling anyone, she took her tools and provisions and found refuge in a dilapidated mud brick hut along the river's edge. Here, amidst the humid air and the scent of wet earth, she began her quest for the lost secret. She spent her days examining ancient ceramic shards, studying their patterns, and digging through different layers of soil. A single question echoed in her mind. How did the ancestors of Naqada make this clay so durable? Days turned into weeks. Nefer's every attempt ended in failure. The mixture of water and earth from the flood was never quite right. But one afternoon, in a moment of despair, her eyes caught a rainbow arcing across the sky after a storm. It was a beautiful dance of colors, a reflection of the sun's light in the water. In that instant, a thought ignited in Nefer's mind. Colors. The secret, she realized, might lie in the chemical composition of the earth itself, the different minerals. Brought down by the river with this new insight, Nefer began to observe her surroundings with fresh eyes. She collected red, yellow, and white particles of sand and rock minerals she had previously ignored. She ground them into fine powders and began to experiment with different ratios, adding them to her clay. After weeks of trial and error, one night she opened her kiln to find a pot unlike any she had made before. Its color was more vibrant, its texture smoother, and most importantly, when she dropped it to the ground, it didn't shatter. She had found the secret. The right combination of mineral salts and river soil gave the clay an incredible resilience. This new technique was a modern interpretation of the ancient knowledge of Naqada. Nefer returned to her tribe with great joy. Thanks to her discovery, their pottery was now not only beautiful but strong. This was more than just a technique. It was a source of hope. The tribe made the decision to build a permanent settlement by the Nile. Nefer's pots became more than just vessels for water and food. They became symbols of their new identity. Nefer's story is a testament to how ordinary people laid the foundation of a great civilization. It wasn't the thrones of pharaohs or the swords of armies. It was the curiosity of a potter, the determination in her heart, and the effort to understand the gifts of the Nile that laid the first bricks of settled life and civilization. Nefer, perhaps, is one of the countless unsung heroes whose names never made it into the annals of history, but who, with a single pot, changed the destiny of Egypt. Her story shows us how an individual's quest, not just for daily survival, but for a legacy to leave behind, became the very heartbeat of a nascent world. The age of the pyramids, with the foundation of a unified state firmly laid, that burgeoning civilization began to dream on an entirely different scale, resulting in an era where truly monumental pyramids rose from the desert, reflecting not just a centralized power, but an unwavering, almost audacious belief in divine kingship. This epic, known as the Old Kingdom, is often called the Age of the Pyramids, and for good reason. It began with kings like Djoser, who with his brilliant vizier Imhotep conceived of the step pyramid at Saqqara. This wasn't just a tomb. It was a revolutionary architectural leap, a stacked mastaba that marked the first true pyramid breaking free from the flat, rectangular burial mounds of earlier times. A mainstream historical fact is that the step pyramid represents the earliest large-scale stone construction in history, a testament to a society capable of organizing massive labor forces and executing complex engineering projects. Following Djoser, the pyramid builders just kept getting more ambitious. Then came the undisputed champions, the Great Pyramids of Giza, built for Neferu's son, Khufu, and his successors. The Great Pyramid of Giza for Khufu is a mind-boggling achievement. Standing over 146 meters tall, it was the tallest man-made structure in the world for over 3,800 years. The pyramids were not just tombs. They were cosmic machines designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey to the afterlife. This belief system permeated society with an elaborate bureaucracy of viziers, nomarchs, local governors, scribes, and priests, ensuring the smooth functioning of the state. The Old Kingdom truly represents the zenith of pharaonic power, a time when the king's authority was unquestioned and his eternal legacy was quite literally carved in stone. The First Intermediate Period and Middle Kingdom Renaissance, that seemingly unshakable foundation of centralized power, eventually began to show cracks, leading to a profound shift where royal authority fractured, tragically plunging Egypt into a prolonged period of regional strife and decentralized power. Historians still argue whether the decline was primarily due to a series of unusually low Nile floods leading to widespread famine, or if it was more a political breakdown as regional governors gained more autonomy. This turbulent era is aptly named the First Intermediate Period. A mainstream historical fact from this period is the marked increase in local artistic styles as regional workshops developed their own unique aesthetics, free from the strictures of a unified royal court. This artistic diversity, while fascinating for modern scholars, highlights the fragmentation of power despite the chaos. With the decline of central authority, there was a shift in religious belief and funerary practices. The coffin texts, a collection of funerary spells and rituals, began to appear on the coffins of non-royal individuals, promising them access to the same eternal paradise previously reserved for kings. From the crucible of disunity, a new dawn began to break over Egypt, bringing with it a remarkable Middle Kingdom renaissance. This reunification is largely credited to the rulers from Thebes, particularly Mentuhotep II of the 11th dynasty, who finally defeated his northern rivals. This is a foundational moment, marking the beginning of what many consider a classical age of Egyptian civilization. The Middle Kingdom pharaohs adopted a slightly different public persona. They were still divine, of course, but their statues often portrayed them as more human, sometimes even slightly careworn, reflecting the burdens of leadership. This era also saw a remarkable blossoming of Egyptian literature, with works like the story of Sinem and the eloquent peasant, foreign rulers and imperial expansion, just as Egypt had settled into the rhythms of its Middle Kingdom renaissance. The winds of change once again began to blow from beyond its borders, leading to a profound period of instability where foreign Hyksos rulers emerged in the delta, fundamentally challenging the native pharaoh's dominion. This challenging era is known as the Second Intermediate Period, A mainstream historical fact is that the Hyksos established their own capital at Avars in the eastern delta, from which they controlled much of Lower Egypt. What made the Hyksos particularly formidable was their introduction of advanced military technology, notably the horse-drawn chariot and the composite bow. That period of foreign humiliation didn't just end with their expulsion. It forged a new, more outward-looking and decisively assertive Egypt, leading directly to an era where Egypt's reach extended far beyond its traditional borders. This incredible expansion marked the beginning of the New Kingdom, often considered the Golden Age of ancient Egypt, spanning from approximately 1550 to 1070 BCE. A mainstream historical fact from this period is the dramatic increase in the size and organization of the Egyptian army, transforming it into a professional fighting force, complete with specialized units, advanced logistics, and crucially, very horse-drawn chariots they had learned to master from the Hyksos. The pharaohs who followed, like Thutmose III, often dubbed the Napoleon of Egypt, launched 17 successful campaigns into the Near East, consolidating an empire that stretched further than any previous Egyptian dominion. Before the Great Pyramids of Giza, before the colossal statues and the golden masks, a single man had an idea that would change the face of Egypt forever. He was a genius, a visionary, a legend. His name was Imhotep. Our story begins in the heart of the Old Kingdom, around 2670 BCE. The pharaoh was Djoser, and he had a problem. He needed a burial tomb that would not only protect his body for the afterlife, but also declare his divine power to the world. Up until then, pharaohs were buried in simple, flat-topped mud brick tombs called mastabas. But Djoser's brilliant vizier, Imhotep, had a revolutionary idea. Why build out? He might have thought. When we can build up. Imhotep's plan was audacious. He would stack 6 mastabas on top of each other, creating a colossal, step-like monument that reached for the sky. This wasn't just a tomb. It was a cosmic stairway to the heavens, designed to help the pharaoh's soul ascend to the stars. The construction site at Saqqara was unlike anything seen before. Imhotep wasn't just a designer. He was an expert in engineering and logistics. He organized thousands of workers, developed new techniques for cutting and transporting massive limestone blocks, and oversaw every detail. This project was a testament to his genius. The result was the Pyramid of Djoser, the world's first large-scale stone structure. It was a mind-boggling achievement that stood as the tallest man-made structure on Earth for over 3,800 years. It was so impressive that it set the standard for every pyramid that followed, including the famous pyramids of Giza. But Imhotep's talents didn't stop at architecture. He was also a renowned scholar and a master of medicine. In fact, centuries after his death, Egyptians came to revere him not just as a great vizier, but as a god of healing and knowledge. They believed he was the son of Ptah, the god of craftsmen. An architect's dot from a simple vizier, Imhotep became a deity, a truly unique and incredible honor. His legacy is literally carved in stone at Saqqara, a constant reminder of the man who dared to dream bigger, build higher, and change the world one step at a time. What do you think was Imhotep's most impressive achievement? The pyramid or his legendary status as a god? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing stories from ancient history. So impactful, so utterly obsessed with leaving his mark that Ramesses II, often simply known as the Great, became the defining monarch of his age. He ruled for an astonishing 66 years. A mainstream historical fact is his pivotal role in the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites. A fierce clash that, while ending in a stalemate, was proclaimed by Ramesses as a glorious Egyptian victory on countless temple walls. His building frenzy truly sets him apart. He adorned Egypt with more monuments than almost any other pharaoh. Decline and foreign domination, that monumental era of Ramesside power could not last forever. And as the sands of time continued their relentless shift, Egypt found itself entering a challenging new phase where successive foreign powers increasingly vied for control, slowly but inexorably chipping away at Egypt's once mighty independence. This prolonged and often tumultuous period is broadly known as the late period of ancient Egypt. INSTREAM historical fact is the increasing reliance on foreign mercenaries in the Egyptian army, a clear indicator of a weakening national military and a state struggling to maintain its own defense. The Nubians from the south, for example, established the 25th dynasty, ruling over a reunified Egypt for nearly a century. This prolonged tug-of-war finally culminated in a decisive shift of power when the vast Persian Empire, the dominant superpower of its day, absorbed Egypt, ruling as pharaohs but from a distant alien throne. The Persian conquest of Egypt occurred in 525 BCE. A mainstream historical fact is that the Persian conquest marked the beginning of Egypt's prolonged period of foreign domination. Lasting for centuries, this long period of Persian dominance eventually gave way not to a resurgence of native Egyptian rule but to a completely different conqueror, ushering in an entirely new chapter where Alexander the Great's generals founded a new dynasty, blending Hellenistic culture with ancient Egyptian traditions. A mainstream historical fact is that Alexandria, the city founded by Alexander, quickly grew into one of the largest and most prosperous cities of its time, surpassing even Rome for a period. Upon Alexander's sudden death, Egypt fell to Ptolemy, one of his most trusted companions, who established the Ptolemaic dynasty, which would rule for nearly 300 years. Cleopatra, and the end of an era that fascinating Hellenistic blend under the Ptolemies reached its dramatic and ultimately fatal crescendo with the reign of its final, most captivating monarch. For Cleopatra, the last queen of Egypt, found herself irrevocably entangled with the burgeoning power of Rome, gambling everything for her kingdom's survival and tragically losing it all. A mainstream historical fact is that she cultivated a public image that skillfully blended Hellenistic sophistication with traditional Egyptian pharaonic legitimacy, often portraying herself as the goddess Isis. Her reign, however, was immediately embroiled in dynastic struggles and the ever-growing shadow of Rome. Her defeat at the naval Battle of Actium in 31 BCE was devastating. Her death in 30 BCE marked the definitive end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, and, indeed, the end of ancient Egypt as an independent pharaonic kingdom, bringing to a close a continuous line of native or semi-native rulers, stretching back thousands of years. The Queen of Rise. Our story begins in the fertile lands of the Nile, during the New Kingdom, a time when the winds danced with the sands. It was an era where every pharaoh was believed to inherit their power from the gods. Yet, a figure would emerge who would utterly defy tradition, expectations, and the very flow of history. Her name was Hatshepsut. She was a king's daughter, a king's wife, and a king's mother. But these titles were not enough. Growing weary of ruling as regent for her young stepson, Thutmose III, Hatshepsut made a bold and unprecedented claim to the throne for herself. This was no easy decision. Millennia of Egyptian tradition dictated that the throne could only be held by a man. To overcome this obstacle, Hatshepsut displayed an incredible genius and iron will. She commissioned inscriptions and statues of herself with a masculine physique, wearing the traditional pharaonic kilt and the ceremonial false beard. She was no longer just a queen. She was the servant of Mat, the earthly representative of Amun-Ra, and the legitimate king of Egypt. Hatshepsut's reign was a period of peace and prosperity, not of relentless military campaigns. She transformed Egypt into a center of commerce and art, One of her greatest achievements was the great trade expedition she sent to the mythical land of Punt. Her ships returned laden with gold, ivory, exotic woods, and frankincense trees. Expedition enriched Egypt's economy and inspired its artists. In Deir el-Bahari, on the west bank of the Nile, Hatshepsut built a magnificent three-tiered terraced mortuary temple. It was not only an architectural wonder, but also a symbol of her reign's power and legitimacy. The reliefs on its walls depicted the journey to Punt and the divine approval of her ascension to the throne. But a queen's kingship could not last forever. As the rightful heir, Thutmose III, grew older and more powerful, Hatshepsut's legacy came under threat. After her death, Thutmose systematically attempted to erase her name, her statues, and her monuments from the annals of history. The story of a queen who's almost wiped from memory is in fact proof of how powerful and disruptive her impact was. Yet the sands of the Nile could not hide the secret of this forgotten queen forever. The heretic pharaoh of the sun after Hatshepsut, Egypt reverted to the familiar path of its pantheon of gods. However, a new storm was brewing in the waters of the Nile. The name of this storm was Akhenaten. Succeeding his glorious father, Imhotep III, this young pharaoh arrived with a vision. So radical, he would even change his own name. He sought to move himself and his people away from their polytheistic beliefs towards the exclusive worship of a single deity, the sun disk, or Aten. This was a rebellion against thousands of years of Egyptian religious tradition. To escape the power of the Amun priests and traditional religious centers, Akhenaten built a brand new capital city from scratch in the desert, which he named Akhenaten, the horizon of Aten. This city was filled with temples, palaces, and homes dedicated solely to Aten. The name of Amun, or any other god, was forbidden within its walls. By Akhenaten's side was his wife, Nefertiti, one of history's most mysterious and powerful figures. Nefertiti's stunning beauty and power became a symbol of Akhenaten's religious revolution. Countless reliefs and statues were created, depicting the couple openly worshipping the Aten. But this revolution was never embraced by the people, and especially not by the powerful Amun priests. The public felt deprived of the protection of their traditional gods, while the priests lost their power and wealth. Akhenaten's artistic reforms were just as radical as his religious revolution. Artists were encouraged to depict the pharaoh and his family in a more realistic, and at times even distorted, manner. Akhenaten's reign was a brief but seismic gust of wind for Egypt. After the pharaoh's death, Egypt quickly reverted to its old beliefs. The city of Akhenaten was abandoned. The power of the Amun priests was restored, and Akhenaten's name, much like Hatshepsut's, was systematically erased from history. The curse of the Golden King following Akhenaten's revolution. The religious order of Egypt had to be restored. This task fell to Akhenaten's 9-year-old son, a boy originally named Tutankhamun. Under the pressure of the Amun priests, he changed his name to Tutankhamun, living image of Amun, officially ending the Amarna period and re-establishing the traditional Egyptian religion. Tutankhamun had a short and largely uneventful reign. When he died mysteriously at the age of 19, no one could have predicted that his name would become the most famous of all pharaohs. He was buried in the Valley of the Kings in a modest tomb compared to his predecessors, while the tombs of the great pharaohs were looted over centuries. Tutankhamun's tomb remained hidden, buried deep beneath the sands of time. Thousands of years later, in 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter, after years of a nearly hopeless search, stumbled upon a step in the Valley of the Kings. This step was the beginning of the greatest discovery in history, the almost completely intact tomb of Tutankhamun. When Carter and his patron, Lord Carnarvon, entered the tomb, they could not believe their eyes. 4 rooms filled with thousands of artifacts, gold, jewelry, and items from the pharaoh's life remained untouched by the ravages of time. The most breathtaking discovery was the magnificent solid gold burial mask covering the pharaoh's face. This mask became the iconic symbol of Tutankhamun, and all of ancient Egypt. The discovery of the tomb made headlines worldwide. But with the discovery came a legend. The inscription at the tomb's entrance, "Cursed be he who disturbs the peace of the king," gave rise to the myth of the pharaoh's curse. The death of Lord Carnarvon, shortly after the tomb's opening, followed by other strange occurrences, fueled the legend. Tutankhamun's tomb was not just an archaeological find, but a phenomenon that inspired mystery, fear, and wonder. The empire's greatest builder after Tutankhamun's brief reign, Egypt was ready to regain its strength and former glory. The most striking figure of this era was a pharaoh known as Ramesses II, or Ramesses the Great. He was Egypt's last great warrior and its most prolific builder. He ruled for an astonishing 66 years, and he used every moment to carve his name into history. One of Ramesses' most significant military achievements was the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittite Empire. Though the battle ended in a stalemate, Ramesses proclaimed it as a glorious Egyptian victory and had his triumph inscribed on countless temple walls. This propaganda solidified his image of power and invincibility. But what truly sets Ramesses apart from other pharaohs was his astonishing building frenzy. He adorned all of Egypt with his statues, temples, and obelisks. The colossal rock cut temples at Abu Simbel, the great courtyards and pylons he added to the temples of Karnak and Luxor, all declared his grandeur and divinity. Every stone, every pillar, and every monument carried Ramesses' desire to live forever. He transformed Egypt into an art gallery, a temple to his own immortality. The end of the Golden Age, but like all empires, the magnificent structure built by Ramesses began to weaken over time. After his death, Egypt's power slowly eroded. Internal strife, economic difficulties, and external threats shook a civilization that was once invincible. Egypt began to rely more and more on foreign mercenaries in its army, a clear sign of a weakening national identity. This tumultuous period culminated in Egypt falling under the hegemony of foreign powers. First the Nubians from the south, then the Assyrians, and finally the vast Persian Empire conquered Egypt. The Persians, though they ruled as pharaohs, governed Egypt as a distant alien province. Persian dominance eventually gave way, not to a resurgence of native Egyptian rule, but to a completely different conqueror. When Alexander the Great expanded his empire eastward, he arrived in Egypt. Greeted as a liberator by the Egyptians, Alexander founded a magnificent city on the Mediterranean coast and named it after himself, Alexandria. After Alexander's sudden death, his empire was divided among his generals, and Egypt fell to one of his most trusted commanders, Ptolemy. Ptolemy established the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt. This dynasty, which blended Hellenistic culture with ancient Egyptian traditions, ruled for 300 years. During this period, Alexandria became one of the most important centers of science, art, and commerce. Yet, this was a new kingdom, with a dynasty whose roots did not lie in the soil of Egypt. The Queen of the Nile and the shadow of Rome, the Ptolemaic dynasty's final queen, was one of history's most captivating and tragic figures, Cleopatra. Although she was the heir of a Greek dynasty, she saw herself as the reincarnation of the Egyptian goddess Isis. She was one of the few Ptolemaic rulers who could speak Egyptian and sought to connect with her people. To protect her throne, Cleopatra was forced to form alliances with the leaders of the era's greatest power, Rome. She famously charmed first Julius Caesar and then Mark Antony. Her goal was to use Rome's power to protect Egypt's independence, but fate played a cruel hand. At the naval battle of Actium, the forces of Antony and Cleopatra were defeated by Rome's rising star, Octavian, later Emperor Augustus. This defeat was the beginning of the end for Egypt's independence. Returning to Egypt, Cleopatra and Antony knew that Octavian's army would soon enter the city. Antony, unable to face defeat, committed suicide. Cleopatra, to avoid being taken captive, ended her life in a dramatic fashion. Legend says she allowed herself to be bitten by an asp. Cleopatra's death was not just the end of a queen, but the end of a civilization thousands of years in the making. Egypt became a province of the Ramesses Empire and would never again be ruled by a pharaoh. The sands of the Nile closed the final page on this great civilization, and the story of its legendary pharaohs fell silent forever. The golden age of the pharaohs had passed, but for the people of Egypt, life endured. The colossal shadow of the Roman Empire now loomed over the fertile lands, transforming the ancient kingdom into the breadbasket of Rome. Yet, for the ordinary man, life's rhythm was still dictated by the ebb and flow of the Nile, the scent of the fields, and the faint whispers of the old gods. Our story unfolds in the bustling, sun-drenched city of Alexandria, within the administrative halls of Roman power. We meet Senefer, a young scribe of a privileged class. His mastery of writing, a skill reserved for the elite, made him a vital cog in the Roman bureaucratic machine. His duty was to collect taxes, meticulously calculating harvests, determining the grain quotas for each village, and ensuring the smooth operation of Rome's vital supply chain. Senefer performed his work with impeccable precision. Yet, a heavy burden weighed on his soul, one that clashed with his ancestral beliefs. He was a believer in Ma'at, the ancient principle of cosmic order, truth, and justice. But the Roman tax system, he felt, was anything but just. Farmers, even in times of drought, were forced to surrender their share. Some families were left with barely enough to survive the winter. As Senefer's hand recorded the figures, he felt, not like an instrument of justice, but of a cruel and unyielding order. One evening, while sifting through old tax records, he discovered a scroll in a dusty chest, a relic passed down from his ancestors. It was written in hieroglyphs and contained ancient medical knowledge. But this was no ordinary text. It was written with a rational, almost scientific precision, much like the famous Edwin Smith papyrus, without invoking magic. The papyrus detailed the treatment for a rare and fatal injury, a cracked skull with an inflamed brain, and it described a surprisingly modern surgical procedure. This discovery deepened Senefer's convictions. His ancestors were not merely builders of monuments. They were also luminaries of science. Senefer found himself caught in a profound dilemma, a chasm between the Roman order and the principles of Ma'at. Would he serve his own sense of justice or the demands of his Roman rulers? This mysterious scroll had suddenly bestowed upon him a new mission: to preserve the knowledge of his ancestors and to keep the spirit of Egypt alive under Rome's shadow. But fulfilling this mission would jeopardize his position as a scribe, and perhaps even cost him his life. The story follows Senefer as he grapples with this dilemma, unravels the secrets of the papyrus, and attempts to strike a balance between the ancient wisdom of Egypt and the overwhelming power of Rome. Roman rule and daily life after Cleopatra's demise, Egypt was transformed into a vital Ramesses province, destined to feed the sprawling empire with its vast and indispensable agricultural wealth. A mainstream historical fact is that Egypt became the breadbasket of Rome, supplying a significant portion of the grain needed to feed the city of Rome and its legions, making it an absolutely crucial asset for the Roman Empire. While the grand narratives of pharaohs often dominate our historical curiosity, it's just as fascinating to contemplate the day-to-day realities of those who lived beneath the shadow of the pyramids. For the ordinary existence of everyone, from sun-baked farmers to diligent scribes, revolved entirely around the predictable, life-sustaining rhythms of the Nile, and a remarkably rigid social hierarchy. At the base of this pyramid were the vast majority of Egyptians, the farmers. A mainstream historical fact is the highly organized system of taxation where a significant portion of their produce was collected by the state, supporting the pharaoh, the priesthoods, and the vast bureaucracy. Above the farmers were skilled laborers and craftsmen. Then came the scribes, a truly privileged class. Education was arduous and exclusive, primarily reserved for boys from elite families. Scribes held positions of immense power and respect. Within the bureaucracy, managing records, collecting taxes, and administering justice. At the top of the hierarchy, beneath the divine pharaoh, were the powerful viziers, high priests, and noble families. Religion, and the afterlife pervading every aspect of that ancient Egyptian world was a rich and intricate spiritual landscape. At the very heart of their religious system was the concept of Ma'at, a fundamental principle of cosmic order, truth, justice, and balance. A mainstream historical fact is that the concept of Ma'at permeated all levels of Egyptian society and was central to their understanding of justice and righteousness. The Egyptian pantheon was vast and multifaceted, with thousands of deities. Temples were not just places of worship. They were considered the literal homes of the gods on earth. This profound belief in an ordered cosmos naturally extended to their understanding of what lay beyond this life, leading to the development of incredibly elaborate mummification practices. The physical body needed to remain intact and recognizable for the soul's eternal journey. A mainstream historical fact is the detailed and systematic process of internal organ removal, desiccation with natron, and extensive wrapping, which evolved over thousands of years. The process of mummification was typically long and involved, lasting around 70 days. The removed organs were dried with natron and placed in 4 canopic jars. After the organs were removed, the body was packed with natron for about 40 days to completely dry out the tissues. Art, architecture, and writing. Ancient Egyptian art and architecture, far from being mere decoration, served both profound religious devotion and powerful expressions of royal power. A mainstream historical fact is the adherence to these artistic conventions for millennia, ensuring that a statue from the Old Kingdom would be immediately recognizable as Egyptian alongside one from the New Kingdom. Their architecture is astounding. The pyramids of Giza, for example, are perfectly aligned with cardinal points and astronomical events, demonstrating an astonishing grasp of mathematics and astronomy, beyond the colossal statements in stone lay. Another equally profound expression of Egyptian ingenuity, their sophisticated systems of writing and scribal practice. A mainstream historical fact is the incredible longevity of hieroglyphs, remaining in use for over 3,500 years. For everyday administrative and literary purposes, the Egyptians developed a more cursive, simplified script called hieratic, and later an even more simplified script called Demotic. The mastery of these writing systems was the exclusive domain of the scribal class. Science, medicine, and economy. The ancient Egyptians also developed remarkably advanced medicine and science. A mainstream historical fact, the Edwin Smith Papyrus, is a remarkable medical text that details surgical treatments for traumatic injuries. It describes methods of examination, diagnosis, prognosis, and treatment in a highly rational, almost scientific manner without invoking magic. In the realm of science, they developed a highly accurate solar calendar of 365 days, which was crucial for predicting the Nile's inundation and organizing agricultural cycles. Their mathematical prowess is evident in the construction of the pyramids. Their entire economy and trade system revolved ingeniously around the mighty Nile. A mainstream historical fact is that the concept of money as coinage didn't exist for most of ancient Egyptian history. Instead, a barter system prevailed. The Nile itself was the paramount trade route, allowing for a highly centralized economy. Beyond their borders, Egypt engaged in extensive international trade, particularly during the New Kingdom, when its imperial reach expanded the enduring legacy, even as the spiritual landscape of ancient Egypt gradually transformed under the successive tides of Christianity and Islam. The silent, awe-inspiring remnants of its pharaonic past refused to truly vanish. The echoes of ancient Egypt continue to resonate with astonishing power, captivating modern minds. A mainstream historical fact is the profound and lasting impact of archaeological discoveries, from the Rosetta Stone to Tutankhamun's tomb, which have continually reshaped our understanding and fueled popular interest. Beyond the monumental, Egypt's legacy permeates countless aspects of our modern world. Their calendar, with its 365 days, is a direct ancestor of our own. Their medical practices show surprising insights that echo in modern medicine. And the very concept of monumental architecture, designed to inspire awe and convey power, owes a conceptual nod to the Pharaohs. The story of ancient Egypt offers profound insights into the human condition. It reminds us that civilizations rise and fall, but the human spirit's capacity for creativity, devotion, and monumental achievement can leave an indelible mark on the sands of time. Its legacy is a living, breathing narrative that continues to inform and inspire us, a testament to a civilization that, even in its silence, speaks volumes.